Hello and welcome to a new video. We are now in August 2025 and today I would like to review what has happened here in the last month since my video in July. So let's get started. First of all, it has turned out to be a very hot and dry summer here in Nova Scotia. So much so that we haven't had any significant rain in over a month and not a lot of rain is in the forecast. Wells are running low, water reservoirs are running low, and water has become the name of the game for animals and humans. So the bees are no exception. About a couple of weeks ago, the bees started to seek out a water source we have for chickens here. And when I noticed that, I created a designated water source just for the bees, which you see in this part of the video here. I did some research and read that adding clay pebbles to the water for the bees is a good idea because it helps them avoid drowning. They're not great swimmers from what I understand. So you can actually see in this little clip here that the bee on the right hand side there drinking the water is shortly going to be sort of pushed into the water by this other bee. And there you go. And the bee is now holding on or trying to hold on to the clay pebbles in order to get out of the water. And luckily, she manages to do just that and fly away. So the bee survived and avoided drowning with the help of the clay pebbles. From what I have observed, I can highly recommend adding clay pebbles to any water source for the bees, and they are very reasonably priced. You can get a small bag for like $9 at a local Canadian Tire. Okay, let us do a quick review from the last video, which here is about the first hive inspection I did on the 10th of July. As you can see here, at the time I started the hive with 10 Layens frames, and during this first inspection I noticed that the bees had drawn comb on all 10 frames. At that time I decided to add extra frames, and what I ended up doing the day after I published the video is actually fill in the entire hive with its full capacity of frames, which is 25 frames. And I did that because the weather was already hot at the time and I felt that the bees needed the extra space and air circulation or ventilation in order to manage throughout the summer. And in hindsight, I think it was a good idea, because the more ventilation the better during a summer like we've been having here with again very dry and hot conditions. So what I did after I filled the entire hive with its full capacity of frames, I did a second hive inspection at the very end of July. It was a very brief inspection, and I have to say this was the first time when I opened the hive and took out a frame that the bees gave me a message of telling me, why are you actually here? Leave us alone. We just want to do what we need to do. And I got that message very quickly. So you can see in the video part here that I'm taking out frame number 15 shortly, which is as far as they had drawn comb at the time. So basically, it took the bees about 3 weeks from the 10th of July till the end of that month to draw comb on an extra 5 frames. So conceivably they would need an additional 6 weeks to fill in twice as much, which means 10 more frames, which would bring them to middle of September, granted that the honey flow stays consistent, which stay tuned on that. I want to briefly touch on a very important part, which is ventilation. You'll see that the hive has 2 entrances here, the one on the left, which is what the bees use and have been since I installed the colony, and the one on the right, which I opened when I added the 25 frames, but I ended up just blocking it with a mesh so other bees wouldn't get in. And that allows air to still flow through. You see here on the side of the hive, on the roof part, there are 4 holes on either side of the roof, and those are also there for extra ventilation and airflow. And you'll see here that on the inside of those holes, they're basically just protected with I think it's a 1/4 inch mesh, just to avoid other insects from entering the hive through those holes. But I basically allowed for maximum airflow throughout the hot conditions that we've been having here this summer. This brings me to the next part, which is that seasons here in Nova Scotia move quickly and fall is fast approaching. With that in mind, you can see here that I wrapped each of the 4 legs of the hive base with sheet metal. This is about 6 inches long, and it's there to prevent mice from being able to climb up the legs and enter the hive. I'm trying to help the bees safeguard what they worked so hard for all summer long. And here you see what is a temporary chicken wire fence around the perimeter of the area of the hive, which is aimed at bigger animals like raccoons. Eventually, as the apiary grows, we will likely install electric fencing around the wider perimeter. Okay, I'd like to share some final thoughts from my perspective as a first-time beekeeper with 1 colony of local bees kept in a 25-frame Layens hive. First and foremost, I'd like to say that having the bees around is very enjoyable. Just to be able to sit in front of the hive every day and watch the action outside of the hive and observe the bees, around the plants and in the wild is very enjoyable. And from the way I see it is that during the height of the summer, the beekeeper's job is basically to just leave the bees alone as much as possible. I think that the provision of water is an important element depending on the weather conditions, the climate. And here in Nova Scotia, the seasons change very quickly, even though it's still hot and we're at the beginning or almost middle of August now. I'm very quickly thinking ahead of fall and winter. So I'm trying to, safeguard the physical hive and the bees' ability to defend what they have worked so hard for. And we'll see how the rest of the summer progresses. So far, there seems to be an abundance of wildflowers that they can derive nectar from. And hopefully these conditions persist well into September. And then we will see how they fill the rest of the hive or the rest of the 25 frames. But so far, I think they've done an amazing job, and I'm very excited to see how the last few weeks of summer progress, and then we'll share an update as we get closer to fall and see where we are at that time. So thanks again for watching, and stay tuned for another update soon. Bye-bye.